it's your boy Luke, back again with another NFL DFS video, this time for our Week 6 strategy show. What we're going to do in this video is we're going to first cover my favorite 6 value plays for this slate, some people that'll help you save some salary to spend up for an extra stud or two, and then we're going to cover my top 3 fades and my top 3 sleeper picks for this slate. My fades, of course, going to be some of the more popular plays on the slate that I think don't have a good week, and of course my sleeper picks, some of the guys being a little bit overlooked that I think have a good week. So with that being said, we're going to hop right into the picks, starting off with our value picks here for week 6. For our first value play, we have Ricky Seals-Jones at $3,000, somebody who was also on this value plays list come last week, and with a very soft matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs, really like him there at $3,000. Currently projected for 12.4 points and got plenty of targets last week, and I expect that to continue against this soft defense. So again, somebody who's relatively cheap, and taking a value pick at tight end is usually a good idea. One of the lower ceiling positions, so taking a value pick there comes with a little bit less opportunity cost. So that's why he makes it there at number 6. Very solid option, very high floor. Might not have the ceiling as some of these other players, but in cash, a very solid play. At number 5, we have KJ Osborne at $3,500. So obviously a very cheap option at wide receiver in a decent matchup against this Panthers defense, but most importantly, I like the one-on-one matchup he's going to have. The starting corners for this Panthers team are relatively stout, so having Osborne as that number 3 wide receiver, somebody who's going to be running over the middle a little bit more often, means that he might get a few more looks this week. Obviously, with those shutdown corners, one of them being a rookie, they just signed Stephon Gilmore, who is eligible to return. I have Osborne right now projected for 12.7 points, somebody who, again, has a relatively high floor, just because I expect this to be a high-scoring game. Also somebody who, again, is getting a better matchup just because of the other receivers around him. So that's why he makes it there at number 5. Somebody I'll be using in plenty of my Viking stacks with Kirk Cousins this week. At number 4, we have Darrell Williams, $4,900 for the Chiefs against the Washington football team. Projected a little bit higher, obviously a little bit of a higher priced value option here at $4,900, but a solid projection there at 14.5 points. Obviously, we'll be starting for this Chiefs team now that Clyde Edwards-Helaire will be down. Saw plenty of targets out of the backfield last week. Somebody who's been in Kansas City for quite some time, knows this offense, and is going to get acclimated right away. So not really waiting on his production. We know it's going to be coming. Again, this guy is very used to this offense. It's somebody who already has Andy Reid's trust. At number 3, we have Van Jefferson Jr., wide receiver for the LA Rams at $3,400. It's a very good price for somebody who is seemingly the number 2/number 3 wide receiver for this team. To this point here in 2021, actually outweighs Robert Woods in terms of his targets to this point. So somebody who's obviously gotten plenty of touches in this offense. We've seen Robert Woods emerge of late, but again, Van Jefferson Jr., a much better price tag than Woods. So somebody who has a deep play threat, somebody who can take a 5-yard pass, turn it into an 80-yard touchdown. So with this soft matchup against the New York Giants defense, especially a team that's hurting on the offensive side of things, think Van Jefferson Jr. has plenty of upside in GPP contests. But at number 2, we have Adam Humphries, who's going to be the number 2 wide receiver for this Washington football team. You can see I'm targeting this Kansas City team just because they've been so bad against the pass to this point of the year. So at $3,400, really like the opportunity that has opened up for him. Have him projected right now for exactly 13 points. And again, a lot of this opportunity comes from the guys they have down. I mean, Logan Thomas, obviously down at tight end. Obviously, Curtis Samuel not going to be playing as well at wide receiver. Suffered a little bit of a setback last week in his return to action. So Adam Humphries going to see a lot more playing time this week than he's seen in the past. I currently have him projected to be playing about 75% of snaps, getting about 6 targets in this game, and at $3,400 in a high over-under game, that should be more than enough production to pay off that price tag. But for our number 1 value play this week, and it's not necessarily close, that is going to be Khalil Herbert, running back for the Bears, somebody who was a 2nd-round pick this year, was not expected to get action this early into the year, but with David Montgomery going down, not going to be playing this week, he is thrust directly into the starting role. So $4,600, that is a relatively good price tag for any starting running back in the NFL, especially against a weak Packers defense. To this point, they've been much better against the pass than they have against the run, letting over 4.5 yards per carry to opposing rushers. So again, Khalil Herbert, this is going to be his first action in the NFL, but somebody who in college was a dynamic runner, was relatively good at making people miss, but also good as a receiver out of the backfield. So like his chances, have him as a comparable player to somebody like David Montgomery, who again has a high PPR upside, also somebody who's relatively explosive. So really like the situation right here, have him projected for 15.2 points, and is by far my favorite value option for week 6. Quickly, before we hop into my fades and sleepers, just wanted to remind you guys about my NFL Patreon page. On there, you guys can find my projections for every player in this week's field. So not just the guys I talk about in my core plays video on the strategy show here, but every player in every game. So it could be for the showdown slates, for our main slate like we're talking about here. Whatever it is, we don't just cover my projected points. We have my projected ownership numbers, some custom model rankings on there, access to the GS Loot community Discord to ask me questions at any point, also interact with all the other bright minds in there. So overall, recommend you guys check it out. The best part about it though, it is just $1 for the month. So again, that is for every week of the NFL, every game. You guys can get direct access to all of the data I have to offer. So link will be in the description so you guys can go ahead and join. Highly recommend you guys check it out right now. And now for our fades and sleepers. Kicking off our fades at number 3, we have Ezekiel Elliott, who is somebody who's had a little bit of a rough start here to 2021, but more importantly, of late is dealing with injury. So is questionable for this game on Sunday, but is expected to suit up. So it's $7,100 with a little bit of a tough matchup against the Patriots. Just not somebody I'm going to be prioritizing. Obviously, the Cowboys are favorites here, so as a result, you see quite a bit of steam coming behind Elliott. As of right now, projected for 11.6% ownership, which is just far too high for me. Again, they're expecting him to be on a snap count just because of the lower back injury, and I tend to like a lot of the tertiary options on that team a little bit more. So going to be a fade for me. If he was somebody who was 3 or 4% owned on this slate, I think he'd be worth taking a shot on. But with some significant ownership, some significant steam behind him, somebody I'll be fading in my DFS lineups. Number 2, we have Cooper Kupp, wide receiver for the LA Rams, and at $7,900, I think he's just a little bit too expensive for me this week. Also a very soft matchup against this Giants defense, but also a matchup we expect to blow out. We know that the Giants side of things is extremely ugly. Their quarterback might not play. They're going to be without Saquon Barkley, probably without a receiver or two at the very least, and as a result, probably going to get blown out here. And in a blowout, Cooper Kupp not going to get as many targets as we expect in the past. Overall, this is not one of the higher over-under games on the slate either. So at 14.8% ownership, again, the price is a little bit too high for my liking anyways. Somebody I'll be fading here in week 6. But at number 1, our number 1 fade, and this really comes down to injury. That is going to be Kyler Murray of the Cardinals at $7,900. That is actually a relatively good price tag for Murray. Also a relatively good matchup. I mean, we saw the Chargers-Browns game last week absolutely go off, be one of the highest scoring games of the entire year. So it's 6.2% ownership. That looks a little bit appetizing, but dealing with a significant shoulder injury right now. Towards the end of last game when he returned, did not look like himself. Was not able to push the ball downfield. And if you guys remember, at the end of 2020, Murray also dealt with a similar injury. It was in the same shoulder, really struggled with his accuracy, struggled with his power as well, and really had the worst stretch of play he's ever had in his career. So that is scary for me. I worry that he's going to have similar results to what we saw at the end of 2020. So for me, at still significant ownership at over 6% and at his price tag, he's unfortunately going to be a fade for me. And now for our sleeper picks. At number 3, somebody I'm pivoting off of Elliott to. That is going to be Tony Pollard of the Cowboys at $5,600. The price tag is all right. It's going to keep a lot of people off of him because he's obviously not the starting back for this team. But again, with the Elliott injury, with the snap count that we're expecting to have on Elliott, probably close to just 40% of snaps he'll be allowed to play, Pollard is going to see a ton of ownership, a ton of usage as well. And we've seen to this point of the year, Pollard's been somebody that they love using as a change of pace back, very good out of the backfield as a catcher, also extremely explosive. You could argue that he's been the better running back to this point, better in terms of a per snap basis, better in terms of a per carry basis, also better out of the backfield. So against this Patriots team, again, the Cowboys are expected to win this game pretty handedly. I expect Pollard to get a lot more touches than usual, something closer to 16, maybe even 17 touches. And with his production, with his type of explosiveness, that is more than enough carries to end up paying off his price tag. So only going to be owned in 2% of lineups. A lot of people aren't willing to go there because he doesn't have that starting job, but definitely thinks he sees a little bit closer to a starter's workload here with the injury to Elliott. At number 2, we have DJ Moore, somebody I talked about on my core plays video as well. So somebody just like Pollard that you guys already know I'm on, but just wanted to reiterate it a little bit more here. He's $7,300 in a great matchup against this Vikings defense, but most of all, being completely overlooked. He was a fade on our list last week, somebody I wasn't necessarily thrilled about playing, but that came down to matchup. It was matched up against Darius Slay, somebody who's been absolutely locked down to this point of the year. I mean, we saw that there on Thursday Night Football, was an absolute menace, but now against the Vikings, he doesn't have anyone with remotely as much talent. Their best cornerback over there is Patrick Peterson, who is well beyond his prime. So at 6.2% ownership, DJ Moore is definitely somebody I'm buying back in on just because of the high upside game right there. Also just one of the highest upside players, period, in the NFL. Can take a 5-yard catch, turn it into an 80-yard touchdown, can high point the ball very well in the red zone. Is due for a massive game over these next few weeks. But at number one, our number one sleeper this week is going to be Joe Burrow, quarterback for the Bengals. Obviously, not getting much steam this week. This is a relatively low total game between the Bengals and Lions, but Joe Burrow, somebody who's shown in the past, he can go out there and light up even in the worst of game flow. So $6,300. Again, the Lions defense hasn't been very good to this point. The Bengals are expected to run the ball a lot more. That's why we see such a low total. But who says that Burrow doesn't go out there and just light them up? You've seen it in the past. He has a very good rapport with Jamar Chase. Also good rapport with Tyler Boyd to this point. Solid receivers in Higgins. So overall, really like this offense. Really like the matchup against this team too. And even though Vegas has this as a lower over-under total on the slate, I definitely see an opportunity for Burrow to absolutely go off. So at just 3.3% ownership, somebody who's definitely a little bit sneaky, and I'll be using as an ownership leverage spot for this week. All I've got for this week's strategy show. Go ahead and let me know down in the comments who you've got as, first of all, your favorite value play on the slate, and second of all, your biggest fade and your biggest sleeper. Obviously for me, really like Khalil Herbert in terms of value, and then obviously in terms of our fades and sleepers, I had a few guys there I liked as well. So go ahead and let me know who you've got down in the comments so we can get some debate going down there. As always, guys, really appreciate you stopping by and supporting my channel, also watching the video. If you guys haven't already liked the video, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, highly recommend that you guys do so you guys don't miss any of the content I go ahead and post in the future. So obviously, have the showdown content here on the channel. Obviously, our main slate content that you guys are watching right now. We have all of that coming for every single week going forward. We also have PGA Tour content here. We also have UFC content. So something for everybody. So make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of that. And tomorrow morning, we are going to have my weekly main slate live stream. It'll be at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. There, we're going to talk any last second injuries. We're going to go over my player pool. We're going to go game by game, talking about the game flows I expect. And of course, any live questions in the chat. So make sure to stop on by while you guys are making your lineups tomorrow. Again, just a reminder, that is at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time on Sunday morning. And until then, good luck with all of your lineups for this weekend, and peace.